The West African nation of Nigeria relies heavily on its oil and gas sector. However, this trade comes with a hefty environmental cost. The oil spills often strip the local Nigerian communities of their right to a clean habitat. It pollutes their land and water bodies, while their struggle continues with a prolonged legal battle to save their homes and the planet. Our next report gets you more on the story.
Nigeria, a country full of dense rainforests on the surface and massive oil reserves beneath. The Nigerian economy relies heavily on its oil and gas, which contributes a large portion to the country's budget and GDP. But the oil trade comes at a cost. It often leads to vast environmental destruction. The extraction and transportation of oil cause it to spill. Soil drenched in oil, water bodies covered with oil bubbles are a common sight in southern Nigeria's Niger Delta region. And the cause is often a poorly maintained pipeline that cracks up, or sabotaged lines to steal oil, or an overflowing saver pit. The reasons could be many, but the end sufferers remain the local communities. The damage from these spills strips the locals of their livelihood, forces them to leave their houses, and impacts their health. But it's not just the pain of losing their homes that hounds them, it's also a long legal battle for justice that follows. Nigeria's Ogale and Bille communities are among such sufferers. They lost their livelihood because of a multinational's negligence. These communities sued multinational oil and gas company Shell and its Nigerian subsidiary SPDC. This was for decades of exploitation they faced due to oil spills and subsequent environmental damage. The Ogale community is seeking justice against at least 40 oil spills since 1989 that have severely contaminated their land and waterways, while the Bille, a riverine community of around 45 islands, witnessed massive oil spills between 2011 and 2013.
Our crops is not coming out. We don't have drinking water mostly. The underground water is seriously affected. Even when you dug a borehole now, you can't get a good water to drink in the whole of Ogale. So right now we don't have good source of drinking water in Ogale. No crops coming out, as you can see. The spillage has spoiled to the land that we cannot be able to produce cassava again, which is our source of living.
These two communities are now fighting Shell in the London High Court. A 4-week preliminary issues trial concluded on March 7th. This was to determine the legal issues involved in the case. It will be furthered by a full trial next year to assess whether Shell is liable or not.
These people have been incredibly persistent and determined. They've waited 10 years for this trial to start. They've experienced decades of accumulated contamination of their land. These people are determined to have justice. They're determined that Shell should be held accountable, that they should clean up their pollution, and that they should receive compensation.
While the hearing was underway, demonstrators gathered outside the London High Court to protest against the environmental pollution caused by Shell. A similar protest was carried out by hundreds of indigenes of Ogale community in Nigeria's River State as well.
The oil spills, the gas well in the region is the one that destroyed our soil. And for this reason, we come together today in a very peaceful manner, in a very non-violent manner, and demand our justice. Ogale need justice. Shell must pay. Shell must pay.
Shell has so far denied these charges. It says the vast majority of spills were caused by illegal third-party interference like pipeline sabotage and theft, which is rife in the Niger Delta. The company says it has no obligation to compensate the people living in the areas where spills were caused by the malicious acts of third parties.
Right now, they are taking us from court houses to court houses. spending billions of pounds just to stay away from being responsible for the atrocities that they have cost us. That's sad. So I'm appealing to the conscience of the owners of Royal Dutch Shell. That money is blood money.
The multinationals continue their blame game in the courtrooms for years, while their operations violate the local Nigerian community's rights to a clean environment by polluting it. And their greed bleeds our planet Earth.
Do you think that Ukraine is at its weakest position?
This war is not about Ukraine.
Do you believe that your president was insulted? Yes or no question. Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Diplomacy will work?
Yes,
Do you
it
think
will.
Russia will give up the territory if there is no ceasefire? Do you propose to keep fighting?
We are ready to resist.
Do you think there will be peace?
Many countries gave us 3 days.
President Trump said you don't have any cards.
We do not have another choice.
How do you keep fighting?
You are asking me once again the same question.
Because you've not answered my question.
We have enough capacities to keep fighting.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Lakshman.
Good afternoon.
Making headlines in India well before you landed here. New Delhi has raised concerns in the recent past vis-a-vis the Khalistani separatists that operate in New Zealand. How do you propose to address these concerns?
In our democracy, we believe in the freedom of speech.
Organizations like the Al-Qaeda or ISIS were to hold a referendum in New Zealand, something related to one of your Western partners. Would you say the same?
We have very well-defined laws in our democracy.
No specific conversation on Khalistan on this visit.
It was raised with me. I also raised back our position.
Are you willing to be open to these concerns from New Delhi?
As I keep coming back to you to say, we have strong laws in our system.